If you are an American who believes in liberty, as you should, and I hope all listening to this do, you should be extremely concerned about what you heard the President of the United States say yesterday, blatantly disregarding the constitutional order to say that he somehow has the power as the executive to mandate that businesses over 100 in size must require that they've got people vaccinated or be mandatorily tested. He does not have that power. There is no such power. It is, in fact, unconstitutional. But more than that, because I'm tired of my Republican colleagues thinking that we have to go settle every single one of these questions in the court, it's just flat out tyrannical, right? This is the time right now for every Republican governor and every representative in state houses, and frankly, those of us in Congress, to be standing up and pushing back. I've got a letter right now that I've drafted, I'm circulating among my colleagues, asking Governor Abbott to continue and advance upon what he has already done in terms of mandates, and to basically say that Texas is not going to facilitate any federal enforcement of these orders, and in fact will take steps to defend Texans from the unconstitutional, illegal, tyrannical overreach by Washington. They don't have the power to do it. If we can't stand up for freedom now, then what did is the guy I just talked to, who broke up and choked up sitting in the parking lot of Tractor Supply in Dripping Springs, Texas, because his dad was one of the men that stormed Normandy, and he could barely get it out. He was so angry about the state of what is happening to a country that so many of our forefathers fought, died, bled for. And that's the people that President Trump appropriately represented for 4 years, and why that we need to get back to representing those forgotten.
Governor, the president had a lot to say yesterday, and he didn't say your name, but obviously was referring to you. What do you have to say to him back when it came to about the mask mandates?
Well, I would just say generally, when you're taking action that's unconstitutional, that threatens the jobs of the people in my state, many thousands of jobs, I'm standing for them. We're going to protect their jobs against federal overreach. And this is a guy who criticizes the state of Florida for protecting parents' rights. He says school boards should be able to eliminate parents' rights and force 5-year-old kids to wear masks all day. That's what he thinks is appropriate government. Yet, here he comes from Washington, D.C., instituting an unprecedented mandate, which even his own people have acknowledged in the past is not constitutional. That's not leadership. And I think the problem I have with Joe Biden more than anything, this guy doesn't take responsibility for anything. He's always trying to blame other people, blame other states. This is a guy that promised when he ran for president that he would shut down the virus. If you look now, there's 300% more cases in this country today than a year ago when we had no vaccines at all. So his policies are not working. He's doubling down on things that are going to be very destructive for the livelihoods of many Americans, and obviously going to be destructive to our constitutional system and the rule of law. And so these are times when you believe in that Constitution, you got to stand up. And obviously the substantive issue is important, because there are places that are going to toss aside people they've worked this whole time throughout COVID. Now all of a sudden they should be tossed aside. They were working when nobody had vaccine. You don't know their history. You don't know why they're making decisions that they're making. Many of these people have already recovered and they have immunity. The idea that somehow you have somebody that gets a Johnson & Johnson, they can work, but someone that's got natural immunity somehow can't, that natural immunity is strong. So it's not based on science, and you can say he's saying he's losing patience with people. You know, at the end of the day, we don't live with a one-person rule in this country. We live in a constitutional system which people's rights are respected, but particularly in this juncture, their livelihoods and their jobs have to be protected. I mean, just think about, you know, what this mandate would do. It's going to drive people out of work, out of hospitals, out of all this stuff where you have a need for people. So it's totally counterproductive, and I think it'll ultimately lose in court. But before that, you know, there needs to be action taken to protect the people of our state and hopefully of the entire United States. Nobody should lose their job based on this decision.
Stop recently in Palm Desert, and I went to a coffee shop, and I noticed that half the wait staff was wearing masks and half the wait staff was not. The young lady who was waiting on me was not wearing a mask. And I said, tell me, what's the policy in your store? And she said, well, my boss allows us to wear a mask if we want to, or to not wear one if we don't want to. I said, have you been vaccinated? She said, no. I said, may I ask why? She smiled and she said, you can ask, but I don't have to give you a reason. Isn't this America? Didn't Thomas Jefferson warn about trading freedom for public safety? Let's trust Americans. Let's trust Californians to make their own decisions for themselves and for their children. Vote to recall Gavin Newsom. I'm Larry Elder, and we have a state to save.
Charles Young with WV News.
Hi, y'all. This is Charles Young with WV News. Governor, recently we've heard calls from some Republican lawmakers who have talked about wanting to convene a special legislative session in order to pass legislation which would make it illegal for employers, other institutions like universities to make, they wouldn't be able to mandate vaccines. It would require 3/5 of both chambers in order to do that. Doesn't look like there's the consensus as of yet, but they could call that on their own. What are your thoughts on the calls for that special session? And would you support that type of legislation? Thank you so much.
Well, first of all, I would not support that type of legislation, and the reason that I wouldn't is I just believe just this, that we're talking about intervening in business. I mean, if you just think about it. We're talking about putting a mandate on that a private business couldn't decide on their own what that they wanted to do. Now, I mean, it just seems to me like we have really lost our way. I mean, I always thought that true Republicans stood for letting private business do what they want to do. And now we're trying to impose restrictions on private businesses. I mean, it seems like a complete role reversal. It seems like something that the Democrats would have come up with, years ago, and now the Republicans are just trying to come up and thank goodness, I think at least, that this is only a few, that really have now completely reversed roles. True Republicans really believe in letting private businesses do their own thing. I truly believe that it is not government's place to tell private business what they can do. Now, so Charles, no, I don't support coming in and making mandates against mandates. And so, I absolutely do not. I want to go on the record as saying, what President Biden is doing right now, coming out and saying, well, we're looking at any employer that has more than 100 employees, making it mandatory and everything that they get vaccinated. I absolutely, think that is wrong. I am absolutely not in support of doing that in any way in the state of West Virginia. I am absolutely not supportive of that. And to be further more clear, I would just tell you just this, and this is all there is to it. We've all watched on TV exactly what's going on with the Biden administration. We've watched it at our southern border. We have watched it in Afghanistan. We have absolutely seen us stumble all over ourselves. And now, we're absolutely grabbing for straws and would say, well, let's hit at our businesses. Let's hit at our private folks and everything in every way. No. I think we're going to absolutely, all we're doing is doubling down to try to change the news cycle. That's what this is about. This is just changing the news cycle, to where we will take the attention away from Afghanistan or the southern border or whatever it may be. We will do that in order to just change the news cycle. I do not think that we need to be mandating, that our businesses be, absolutely require people to get vaccinated. I do not think in any way that we, especially as Republicans of all things, it is almost comical to think that Republicans are trying to come up with a way to come up and put restrictions on private businesses. If a private business, if XYZ company out there decides in their mind that they want all their employees vaccinated, and it is the private business's decision to do that, more power to them. But absolutely, to tell that business that they have to do that, or to tell that business that they can't do that, we don't have any business doing that. That's all there is to it. That is not for us to do. And that's how I feel about it. And I'm pretty passionate about it because I think that's right.
Hey everybody, Peter Meyer here. Just got out of the long committee markup hearing. Saw the news that President Biden has instructed OSHA to draft a rule to mandate that all businesses over 100 employees force their employees to get vaccinations. I'm a strong proponent of vaccines. I've gotten my COVID vaccination. I would highly recommend those who have not gotten their vaccine yet to get vaccinated. But the President of the United States using an administrative rule to implement such a far-reaching policy that would impact over 100 million Americans is grossly overstepping that authority. The fact that the United States Postal Service, which has 600,000 employees, is not required to abide by this for some bizarre reason. Well, I shouldn't say bizarre reason. I mean, the actual reason is that they have very strong lobbyists. Their union has really strong lobbyists and a lot of political sway. So this isn't following the science, this is following the politics in that case. But just as a general understanding, this should be a law if it is to be one. This is not the type of thing that should be forced by an administrative rule from the president. Congress delegates authority, and I disagree with this. I'm a supporter of what's called the non-delegation doctrine, of bringing a lot of that back. The rulemaking authority that exists within the executive branch, within administrative agencies, is obscene. It creates a lack of accountability and some very negative outcomes. But the fact that the president is doing doing an end run around the legislative process instead of trying to get something like this passed through a bill by forcing an administrative body to issue a rule. Again, it's an obscene overstepping of authority. It needs to be challenged in the courts. This is just not the way any of this should work. We need to fix the process as it is. If this is the type of thing that would get passed by the legislature, then okay. But this is not the type of thing that...
Hi, Dr. Scott Jansen here. My fellow citizens, I have to ask you, are you prepared to meet the moment with me? Because earlier today, we heard words from our president that are absolutely astonishing. If these governors won't help us beat the pandemic, I'll use my power as president to get them out of the way. I'm not speaking to Republicans. I'm not speaking to Democrats. I'm speaking to every citizen of America. Do you remember the words of Martin Niemöller in 1946 after World War II, when he talked about they came for the socialists, and I wasn't a socialist, so I didn't speak up. They came for the trade unionists. I wasn't a trade unionist, so I didn't speak up. They came for the Jews, and I wasn't a Jew, so I didn't speak up. But when they came for me, there was nobody left to speak up. This is for all of us. Literally, we are seeing an intrusion into American rights. This is not about science. I just spent a couple of hours at a meeting with Dr. Scott Atlas from Stanford. 50 different slides, and he demonstrated how Lancet Journal and New England Journal of Medicine and JAMA demonstrate over and over again their willingness to play a part in this propaganda push. The fact of the matter is, I say no. We meet the moment. There will be no vaccine passports. There will be no private sector vaccine passports. There will be no masks for our children. And there will be no lockdowns. These things do not accomplish what President Biden and many others have said they do. We have to banish this. Frankly, right now, I am writing the bill. This has got to be for Minnesota, a health freedom sanctuary state bill. We have got to lead the way. We cannot do this. I'm calling on all citizens to stand up. Especially I'm calling on my Republican colleagues. Stand up and declare where you are at on this. But we must, as Minnesota, create a health freedom sanctuary state bill. And there will be no vaccine passports, no private sector vaccine passports. There will be no commandeering of state rights by the federal government. There will be no lockdowns. There will be no kids in masks. Enough is enough. Let's meet the moment. I'm welcoming Democrats, independents, and all citizens to join me. But Republicans, I'm calling on you. This is what matters. This is the culmination. This is a propaganda campaign to basically label anyone who's not vaccinated as an extremist. We're not bringing in the science at all of herd immunity or the fact that natural immunity is far more effective than the vaccines. We're looking at vaccines that we're being told by Mayo Clinic and other highly regarded sources, 39%, 42% effective. We must stand up and write the bill. A health freedom sanctuary state. That's what we need to be. Please, meet the moment with me. Nothing matters as much as this does throughout this whole pandemic. We have to wake up. Thank you.